So in this video, I'll be talking about the 7 honest lessons about home ownership that I learned after my first year. And if you are looking to buy a house in the next few years, hopefully this video will give you an insight on what to expect, especially if you're on the fence. See what I did there? And at the end, I'll talk about whether we have any regrets about buying a house last year, or if there's anything that we wish we did different. Now, the first lesson I learned is that buying a house isn't just a financial decision, it's quite an emotional one too. And that makes sense because humans are naturally emotional beings. And given that 90% of people believe that buying a house is one of the biggest life decisions that we make, we're gonna be emotional at some point of the process, whether it's excitement, anxiety, or even some form of regret. And according to a survey from Zillow, around 50% of homebuyers admit to having cried at least once during the process of buying a house, which I definitely didn't do, because I don't do that.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
And this is different from buying a laptop or even buying something like a car, because there's a sense of identity tied to the house, because this is where you'll be making memories or possibly even raising a family. And that emotional attachment could lead to loss aversion mindset, where people might overlook negative aspect of a property just because they're emotionally invested into the idea of owning a house. So it's absolutely critical to recognize this mindset beforehand and evaluate every potential purchase through a logical thought process. So when you get emotionally invested, you'll end up ignoring red flags just because it feels right. Yes, I'm talking to you. You know who you are, ignoring those clear red flags, but not this time though, okay?
You're better than that!
And ultimately, buying a house is a long-term decision, so it's best to be patient, and I'll even argue that it's better to buy a month later than you hoped for a house that ticks most, if not all of your boxes, than try to close on a house as quickly as possible. So make the extra effort to keep your emotions in check and always be asking yourself, could I see this property being a fit even 5 to 10 years from now? And you can also make a list of non-negotiables to guide your decision-making process, and this will help you to balance out the emotions with logic. Now, for lesson 2, people rarely regret buying too soon. Instead, they regret buying too late. And this feels like it's contrary to the last point of not rushing too much, but I'm not talking about waiting for a few months or even a year to find a place. But this is more regarding people who delayed their buying process for at least a few years, especially if they're already financially ready. And honestly, many people hesitate to buy a house because they worry about making a house, which is understandable. And studies show that 60 to 70% of homebuyers regret their decision to wait for perfect condition or better pricing and just wish that they had bought a home earlier instead, because real estate prices often rise faster than expected. Now, for example, over the last 5 years, the US home prices have grown an average of 8% per year. And in 2021 alone, home prices have skyrocketed by 18% year over year. And waiting for a housing market to self-correct can also be a big mistake because of other things that influence the higher prices, like inflation, interest rates, and even competition. So there's no way to predict a perfect time to buy a house. So the best thing that you could do is to just buy a house when you're financially ready to buy. And know that homes will appreciate in value over the long term, and often the cost of waiting often outweighs the risk of buying too early. Now, the third lesson of owning a house costs a lot more at first, but it pays off over time. And when we first bought our house, the initial cost hit hard, including closing costs, the mortgage, home insurance, interest payments, and all the utilities, especially since we were used to just only paying for our monthly rent. And the average monthly mortgage payments in 2023 was $2,268. That doesn't even include property taxes or even insurance. And if you compare this amount to renting, which is 37% cheaper than owning in most US cities, it feels like renting might actually be the better alternative. And according to the US Bureau, home ownership costs actually increased by as much as 2 to 3% per year, especially in the areas of rising property taxes and maintenance. But compared to renting, which saw an average increase of 6.5% in 2023, home ownership just became a lot more affordable relative to renting over time. And in some cities, even experience a rent increase of 30% or more. So how much you'll be paying is more or less out of your hands and in the hands of the rental market. But a fixed rate mortgage means that your monthly housing payments will remain steady even if the initial cost may sting. And all of this means that your cash flow will be low. So just be prepared, because one of the things that I had to learn was just how to manage with that tight budget that I had after buying a house. And according to a recent data, over 50% of first-time homebuyers in 2023 had to cut back on their spending in some way to afford their house. And about 90% of homeowners even underestimated the ongoing cost of ownership. So things like high utility bill, property taxes, and unexpected repairs can add up super fast. So just make sure you build a cushion. And a good place to start is having a 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up on top of the down payments and closing costs. And while we're on the topic of costs, there'll always be unexpected costs that just comes up. And it feels like it always happens every few months. Like, I don't know why, but there's always something that breaks or goes wrong that needs to be fixed. And a fun fact, or maybe not so fun fact, is that 73% of homeowners report of having at least one major unexpected repair within the first 2 years of owning a house. And I've experienced this firsthand. And those things could range from a leaky roof or a broken HVAC system. And it's like the house has a sixth sense for when you're low on cash. And according to a home advisor, the average homeowner spends anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 annually on maintenance and repairs. And a good rule is to set aside 1% of your home purchase price each year for maintenance. And if you are looking to buy in the next few years, please make sure to get your inspection done before you buy and never waive it during negotiations. And a good inspector will see everything, so if there's anything that's wrong, you could actually use it in your negotiation to get a lower price or get the seller to fix it before closing. And in our first month of closing, our laundry machine ended up acting weird, so we ended up having to call someone for it, which is a few $100s right there. And then after we fixed that, we had a few of our electrical outlets just stop working randomly. So we had to call an electrician for that. So that ended up costing us another few $100s. And not to mention, electricians ended up telling us that we had a separate problem that needs to be fixed in order for the outlets to work, which they estimated to cost even more. So when I asked a few further questions, we figured out that we actually didn't need to get that done. So that actually made me lose some trust when it comes to working with contractors, but it's obviously challenging because I don't understand the root cause or the issue like they do. So the sixth lesson is to get a second quote or a second opinion on a home repairs or renovations, especially when it's more than $1,000. And so that's what we ended up doing recently when our heater stopped working at the start of the winter time. And we first called someone to take a look and we ended up getting a quote for $1,500. And because of my experience with the electrician, we ended up wanting a second opinion. And that second contractor found the same problem, but it was gonna cost us $2,400 with them. So we decided to go with the first contractor given that they were both highly rated in the area. But we could have easily called the $2,400 contractor at first. And having a second quote not only gives you an option between the two contractors and their pricing, but it helps you to know whether the fix is entirely necessary. And the seventh lesson is that even with the $1,500 that we spent on the heater to fix it, every dollar that you spend on repairs helps you maintain your home value. So in that way, I don't view the money that we spent on the repair as an expense, but more as an investment. And another thing to think about is that the small problems that you fix right away could also help to prevent bigger problems down the line. Now, do I regret buying our house? Absolutely not. If anything, we actually wish we bought sooner, but the timing was right for us when we actually ended up buying. And there's nothing quite like the pride and stability of owning your own house, and it's definitely worth the responsibility that it requires. So I hope these lessons will help you in your home buying process. And if you found this video to be helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more personal finance videos. And if you have any other homeownership lessons that I didn't mention, make sure you share them in the comments below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.